Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am Henry Liu, and today I'm joined by Rainier. Rainier, how's it going, buddy?
I am doing awesome.
Excellent. I'm also joined by Christian Diadamo. Christian, how goes?
Oh, it goes well. I'm doing awesome as well.
Good to hear. I'm also joined by Porfirio Rangel. Porfirio Rangel, how are you, Porfirio?
I'm doing pretty good, Henry. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So we got the all-star team here, and we're going to talk about The Batman, recently released in theaters. We're going to get into it, initially not spoilery, and then we're going to get into spoiler territory. The Comic Sauce Podcast is on social media at Comic Sauce Pod on Twitter and Instagram. So yeah, today is March 18th, 2022, and The Batman has been out for a couple weeks now. So we've had time to process, and yeah, we're gonna get into it. So I know when this movie came out, there were a lot of questions. You know, there's a new Batman actor here, Robert Pattinson. He didn't appear in any of the Snyderverse movies. He's brand new to the franchise. So yeah, there was a lot of news when he was in the running for the role, when he finally did get the role, a lot of buzz. So certainly there was a lot of anticipation, I think, about how he would do in the role, right? And I think all of us had a lot of other questions going in. So yeah, maybe we'll just go around the room a little bit. What was going through your mind before seeing this movie? Maybe like just before, like as the lights dimmed, what was going through your brain? Yeah. How about you, Rainier? You want to start with your initial thoughts?
Yeah, initial thoughts of Robert Pattinson. I mean, his character is so tied to the Twilight series that, like, I think that was everyone's initial reaction, like the vampire guy, the Twilight guy. I'm proud to say that, like, I called it very early on, saying I think he's going to be a great Batman. Before even a trailer came out, and I think he held up his end of the bargain. I think he did a great job in this movie, and we'll get more into that later.
Definitely, but I can attest to that. I remember pretty early on you had faith in this actor. A lot of people didn't, so you know, I can attest to that.
Yeah, it is funny though how everyone has like an initial reaction, like they think they're going to be terrible because they know the actor from previous movies, and like the height of their success for whatever reason determines like the actor they're going to be. But like he was Cedric in Harry Potter, right? And he was also great in Tenet. Like he's certainly got the acting chops. And I've seen him in one other like indie film. I can't remember the name of it that comes off the top of my head. But yeah, I knew he was going to pull it off.
Yeah, maybe we can continue with that a little bit. I'm curious about everyone's take of Robert Pattinson pre-watching the movie. Yeah, how about you, Christian? What were your thoughts about this actor before you saw the Batman?
For some reason with Batman castings, like there's always a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, going back to like, you know, Heath Ledger, like, you know, when he was first cast as the Joker, everyone, you know, I heard it, Heath Ledger, the guy from Brokeback Mountain, no way he could play the Joker. And then, you know, that blew everyone's minds. Going back further, I've heard when Michael Keaton was cast as Batman back in, you know, the 80s, people wrote letters to WB saying, you can't cast Mr. Mom as Batman.
Yep.
And, you know, and so I keep hearing these and I keep hearing the controversy and I'm like, okay, just, you know what, let the movie come out. Just try not to think too much about it, see, like, take the movie as it is and take, his take as the character as it is. But like, uh, eh, I didn't really see any of his movies really, with the exception, I guess, Harry Potter, up until I saw Good Time over COVID or 2020. I don't know if that was the movie you were thinking of, Rainier.
No,
Good Time.
it was something that came out shortly after like the first like Twilight movies.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
never mind. But Good Time, he puts in this really intense performance and great. And I think watching that movie was the one that really sold me on this guy can do Batman.
Cool. So you had faith as well, it sounds like.
Hmm.
Right on. Okay. How about you, Porfirio? What were your thoughts on this actor?
Yeah, so like a lot of you guys, I was only familiar with his Twilight work, and so I was like, well, he's already been a bat, I guess, once, in a sense, so he could do it again.
Have you seen the
But
Twilight movies?
uh-huh. But no, like I didn't bash his the casting or anything. I was just like, this is an interesting choice. Like, Warner Brothers must have like some kind of sense into why they casted him and everything. So I was like, I'd definitely be like open-minded about like seeing him in this role and everything. Like you like I said, I wasn't familiar with his work outside Twilight, but I just remember hearing a lot of people saying that he's a really good actor and stuff like that. Um and I think I wasn't familiar. The first movie I saw him was during the pandemic was The Devil Within with Tom Holland also, or I forgot what the movie's
Yeah,
called, but
The Devil All the Time.
The Devil All the Time. Yeah, there we go. And he sold me for after that movie. I was like, okay, I could definitely see this guy as Batman. And but I don't know, like I just kind of had faith in the studio. She's like, this is the same studio that had like Heath Ledger as Joker and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Like, I'm pretty sure they kind of have a sense of what they know, what they want to do. So I was just open-minded and just kind of had faith that Robert would kill it, and I think he killed it. Yeah. So I'll say more about that later. But yeah.
Cool. Well, that's good to hear. All you guys had some faith. I don't think I really did. I remember not only the casting announcement, but there was a lot of press about like the short list of actors in the running. And I remember it was down to Robert Pattinson and Nicholas Hoult. Those were like the two finalists. And I'm a big Nicholas Hoult fan. So part of the disappointment for me was that he didn't get the role. Like, I wanted to see him in the role. So maybe that's why I was sort of salty on the whole thing. But the other side of it is, I think, what a lot of moviegoers thought, and it was that Robert Pattinson is too synonymous with his character in Twilight. And I've never seen a Twilight movie, but I've seen advertisements, and I just when I thought of Robert Pattinson, I would just imagine that dude's face on all those posters I would see all the time over the years, right? I just couldn't escape that image. So I thought that might be something I couldn't get over. Like I'd be watching this Batman movie, but the whole time in the back of my head was like sparkly vampire, So that was my thought going in, that I wouldn't be able to kind of enjoy the character as it was, but there was just this baggage along with it, right?
The Twilight baggage.
Yes, exactly, the Twilight baggage. I would
By the
add
way,
too, real quick, I would add too that Harry Potter baggage too, because I did see him in the Harry Potter movies, and Cedric Diggory is like, he's kind of like the pretty boy wizard, and like that's not the best image to have when you're trying to think of the Dark Knight, right? So there's quite a bit of baggage with this actor, so I was a little skeptical going in, so I'll just say that. Go ahead, Rainier.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Porfirio, I've seen the Twilight movies, and I'm going back to what I asked you earlier, but have you seen them? I'm pretty sure his character does not turn into a bat, but I think I know what you're saying. Like he's a vampire, right? Like
He's a vampire.
He's a creature of the night, right?
He's in the vampire bat shadow family.
in the realm.
Yeah.
No, I know what you're saying, Henry, about like the whole baggage deal. What's interesting is, do you remember when we were at Comic-Con and they were talking about like it was something about like anticipated movie, and they announced like Ben Affleck as Batman, and there was a very audible boo from the crowd. You remember that? It's just interesting that everyone immediately thought of Daredevil and completely discounted his entire body of work. Like he's a legit actor. Why is he getting booed playing Batman? And I think that's what it's reminding me of when you're thinking, oh man, the Twilight guy playing the Dark Knight. What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the knee-jerk reaction. You take an actor and you immediately just associate them to the role that they're most known for and completely discount all of their other work, right? So that's not the best thing to do. And just following up on that, kind of like Porfirio, I saw The Devil All the Time also, and he is awesome in that movie. And that was kind of the glimmer of hope for me. I'm like, shit, oh, this guy, he might be able to pull this off. Like I thought I wouldn't be able to get over the fact that he did Twilight and Harry Potter stuff. But I never questioned his ability as an actor. In that role in particular, I thought, oh, this guy he's got the chops. He could do it. So little teaser. We'll get our collective takes on how he actually did later. But for now, a little bit more on anticipation. I don't think we need to get super deep into the other stuff, but here, just a couple random thoughts on my end. I was aware going in of the runtime of this movie, a whopping 3 hours. That is a long movie. So certainly in my mind was, did this movie have to be 3 hours? Yeah. And what else? The rating for this movie is PG-13. And from the trailers, it looked quite dark. And I wondered, is it really PG-13? It seemed like it was going into some pretty dark territory. And, you know, I do have a young child who happens to be pretty into Batman. And I was wondering, is this a movie that I could take him to at some point? So how family friendly is the movie? That was another big question for me going in. How about you guys? Any other thoughts about expectations? What was going on in your mind before the movie started?
Oh, I got one more thing. I guess this kind of goes back to Robert Pattinson. So there was actually a screen test where they like test how the suit looks on camera. That leaked, and it was like an unfinished version of the suit, and it was a very unflattering shot of Robert Pattinson in the suit. I don't know if you guys remember this. This is a few years ago.
I actually saw this post like premiere. I didn't realize that leaked. Either that,
I think
or
it was a leak.
or maybe I just consciously avoided it because I didn't want to like have it spoil my opinion of what was going to happen.
And like it looked pretty bad at the time. It was an unfinished suit, but like the meme going around was that it looked like hockey pads.
Robert Pattinson said that he screen tested in the George Clooney Batman suit.
He did,
Really?
and like he also like I think what was it? Did his audition in that or
cool.
the Val Kilmer one?
Like he had his choice of like which one to wear, and that was the one I think that was the one that fit him best, just for a screen test.
The infamous nipple suit.
All right. How about you, Porfirio? Any other thoughts before seeing this movie?
I mean, I don't think this is so much of a spoiler, but I just remember like going into the movie, like, there were just obviously a lot of reviews going on from like media outlets and just like, I guess, uh like critics alike. And it was so funny. I just remember seeing like there were like major like mainstream media outlets like CNN, SF Chronicle, who were just kind of saying that like the movie was kind of basic, monotone and stuff. Like it wasn't um there wasn't any like real character development. I think they were
Mhm.
just kind of taking it like as a movie critic, cinematographer point of view, whatever. But
Mhm.
other like media outlets like IGN, Nerdist, all those, like they were just like giving really, really high praise to this movie. And so I was just like, okay, like I kind of trust these outlets more because they're like more of like they know what they're talking about when it comes to this kind of stuff. So um I don't know, I kind of had like mixed feelings. I think it was just because of the 3 hour thing, like you were pointing out, Henry. Like for when it comes to like a 3 hour movie, that's usually I see like something like a big finale like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Marvel. But for like uh origin story like Batman, obviously we all know who Batman is, but like that's kind of like risky, I felt like. um but yeah, those were just like my early takes going into the movie.
The 3 hour runtime for me, like if it's a movie I want to see, I feel like I'm getting more bang for my buck. Really, I'm getting more movie for my value.
It's certainly one way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh, go ahead.
in terms of expectations, like my initial expectations were, like I said earlier, that I thought Robert Pattinson was going to do a great job as Batman. But I thought that I was going into it with the expectation this movie was going to be darker, grittier, heavy, like just really heavy hitting. Um, yeah, those were my expectations.
Mhm.
We
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, the 3 hour runtime was a little bit of a concern for me. But to your point, Rainier, if it's something you're enjoying, it's like the more the better in a way. Um, there is a Marvel movie that is 3 hours, and that's Avengers End Game. And that movie to me probably could have been like 3.5 hours. I would have still loved it, right? So um, if it's 3 hours and bad, that's a bad thing. But if it's 3 hours and really good, then not really a bad thing, is it?
Yeah, that's a good point. 3 hours in bad, that would be terrible.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we can get into it. Let's give the big time spoiler alert for the Batman, and we'll get right into it. So I think we can start with what did we like? It sounds like we all enjoyed this movie. Let's get into the specifics. What did we like about the Batman? Anyone want to start here? Porfirio, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So, we all talked about it, but Robert Patterson, he convinced me as Batman. Like he knocked it out of the park. Like it was definitely like I guess like a middle finger to all the haters that like he can play Batman. And I think I had this conversation with you guys like with after the movie. I didn't feel like he convinced me as Bruce Wayne because he didn't have like that playboy millionaire swag to him. But then I read like later on that was like a choice that the director and Robert Patterson made to make him feel like more connected to the atmosphere, to Gotham and stuff. And so to know that that was kind of like a conscious decision, it just kind of made me like um it changed my mindset and was like, okay, well, if that's what you're going for, then you killed it. Like he killed it both as Bruce Wayne and Batman. And just from like the way he talked, and he wasn't like a superhero to say, he was more like a detective, which is what I liked. He was like a guy in a costume vigilante. And yeah, from like the opening scene to like how he does that monologue about like, oh, like when they see my symbol, I want them to fear me and stuff. Like I was like I had goosebumps. I was like, this is fucking awesome. So he, yeah, from like the very first monologue, I was sold. Like I was like, this is Batman for sure.
Right on. Yeah, let's get right into it. Let's go around the room and get everyone's take on the performance. What were your thoughts on Pattinson's what Pattinson brought to the table here? Christian, how about you?
All right. So yeah, I loved him. I thought that Pattinson was was great. Um, I think that one thing he nailed down really, really well is I think nonverbal communication. I think he spoke really non-verbally a lot. There's a lot of the movie that's dedicated to Batman just kind of staring almost like right into the camera, or there's a great moment like at the beginning when the mayor's son or the mayor, or he's looking at the mayor's son after the mayor's been killed, and he just kind of stares at him for a long time and doesn't say anything. But I think you as the viewer get the connection between the two characters. You know, Batman's parents were killed when he was 8 and he had to watch, and that was a very terrible moment. And a lot of what happens in this first murder is like echoed here, and I think there's like a connection that you see in that just kind of like stare down that they kind of had. And he does that multiple times throughout the movie. Like we've already said, the spoiler warning, where at the very end as well, when one of the Riddler's henchmen says that he is vengeance, and Batman just looks at him for a while, doesn't say anything, but you as the viewer kind of take in and soak in the moment that he kind of knows where he messed up as a superhero and
Mm,
how he personally got the idea of Batman wrong and what the mantra of vengeance really means for himself and the city. And the movie just does so much with so little, and I think a lot of that is brought into Pattinson's performance. The way he just brings out the Batman, saying so much with so little.
awesome take, man. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Uh, Porfirio kind of alluded to enjoying him both as Bruce Wayne and Batman. Would you say the same for you, also, Christian?
Yeah, I've seen this movie twice, and
Nice.
I think the first time I was like, "What's going on with this Bruce Wayne? He doesn't seem to change the same way we're used to whenever you see Bruce Wayne versus Batman." But it does feel intentional, um, because he says that he doesn't care about his legacy. He doesn't care about being Bruce Wayne when he's talking to Alfred at the beginning of the movie. But you kind of see the problems that it causes throughout Gotham. Him kind of being aloof to the Wayne legacy um, had created like ripples of corruption throughout, and how he kind of gets the wrong idea about being Batman, and he also gets the idea of being Bruce Wayne towards the end. So I think we're going to gear more towards the classic representation in the next movie and the movie after. But I thought this was a different take, and I appreciated that.
Cool. Okay, how about you, Rainier? What'd you think about Battinson?
I thought the Batman was awesome. The tone, the rhythm, the feeling, the aesthetic, I thought was all really well done. The soundtrack and musical score, I thought was very fitting for this movie. Preferio, I like how you talked about the monologue. Like I think that opening really set like the stage for what we were expecting. I loved how he was just like, it's not a signal, it's a warning. I thought that was great.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because it captures Batman. It's not an origin story, right? It catches Batman like in his sophomore year. Like he has a stride, but it's very early in his stride. And I think that was my takeaway actually of his take on Bruce Wayne. In every Batman movie, we see Bruce Wayne become Batman, right? Like we see him like, you know, creating plans to, protect Gotham as Batman, and he's already Bruce Wayne. But in this case, we're seeing Batman kind of throughout the entire film, even outside of the cowl. And I think that's what we're going to see him learn, is how to become Bruce Wayne. And I think that's very different from all of the other Batman movies we've seen. Because if you think about it, he's been holding all of this anger and, from his point of origin, not really knowing how to navigate the world. So it almost seems natural that he wouldn't know how to be Bruce Wayne. So I think that's a really cool, perspective on Batman. Yeah, I thought they did a great job. The dark grittiness was great. Zoe Kravitz, I mean, what an awesome Catwoman she was. Oh, that's the thing too. Like when Batman comes in, when he's asked, "Who are you?" I mean, obviously you would think he would be like, "I'm Batman," right? I don't think during the entirety of the film, I don't think he ever calls himself Batman. So again, in his sophomore year, I think he's still trying to figure out who Batman is and what Batman does. And I'm really excited to see where it's going to continue.
It's nice. Some great takes there, Rainier. I know you're chomping at the bit. You're really jumping past the questions here, but love to hear all the positives you're throwing out there. But yeah, just going back to Pattinson real quick. Yeah, like I'm the one skeptic going in, right? Didn't believe in our boy. But yeah, he won me over, man. I will say this, like, Rainier, you mentioned the aesthetic of the movie. That kind of set the tone for me, because when I was going in, I was like, okay, I'm afraid of all this Robert Pattinson baggage, right? But immediately, like, not only did this not feel like anything I've seen Robert Pattinson before, to me, this didn't even feel like a Batman movie. It felt like a serial killer movie, right? It felt like I was watching Silence of the Lambs or Zodiac or Seven or something, right?
Like a murder documentary.
Yeah, it felt like straight up like murder vibes, right? So I was immediately transported away from any kind of baggage, and I was kind of like opened up to like, okay, I'm ready to take in whatever I'm about to see. And so not only was the movie completely like subverting my expectations, but then here comes Robert Pattinson. He's a totally different kind of Batman than from what I'm used to, right? He's not the growling Christian Bale. He's not the wisecracking Michael Keaton, right? He's like, I mean, Christian, you were kind of alluding to this, but he's kind of nonverbal, right? And when he does speak, he kind of speaks in whispers. He's really quiet. And I just found that pretty cool, like a totally different take on this character. And yeah, I thought it was cool. I enjoyed this like completely different take on the character. And yeah, kudos to Pattinson. I thought he did a great job here.
I think they did a great job too of highlighting the detective side of Batman.
Yeah.
How he's constantly analyzing the room, he's analyzing the everything, and the way that Robert Pattinson shows that, like, it's awesome.
I love that too. Like, Batman first appeared in Detective Comics, right? And he's known as like the world's greatest detective, right? And I think that's kind of a forgotten thing with the movies and everything. You go going with the big CGI action and everything. But yeah, it's kind of a cool, like, going back to the roots sort of thing. Yeah, what else? Sounds like there's a lot of positivity we had for this movie. Any other call outs here?
Speaking about going back to the roots, like I actually find I find it refreshing, this movie. I mean, like, if you consider like all the superhero movies we've been getting out of the MCU, right? It's gotten to a point where there's alternative worlds, there's magic, there's all this crazy stuff. I feel like the Batman is coming back down to like a roots level, like storytelling, not necessarily an origin story, but it's like it's bringing us back down, to earth with a very very simple but like really intricate story.
Like very like street like.
Yeah, like street level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We may get into some of the like Marvel comparisons later, but you look at what's going on with Marvel and the multiverse and everything, cosmic Marvel, all that stuff. It's getting pretty wild out there, and yeah, pretty refreshing to see something like this that is very grounded in reality. And we don't see superpowers. It's more of a crime slash detective kind of story than a superhero story. So yeah, that was definitely cool to see. I wanted to call something out too. We talk about this a lot with superhero movies, how you can't truly have a great superhero movie if you don't have a great super villain, right? And I thought the Riddler in this movie was fucking amazing. One of the best ever Batman villains in a movie, I think. And it does go back to what I was talking about before, like the serial killer vibe. The Riddler as a straight up serial killer, and not a watered down one. The movie is PG-13, but this is not a watered down serial killer. This is a terrifying murderer. And yeah, like the scenes with the Riddler, I thought were among the best in this movie. With the mask on, with the mask off, his scenes with the Batman, without the Batman, like I was consumed. Like anytime the story started to stray from the Riddler, like I was finding myself wanting to see more. It's like, yeah, let's get back to the Riddler because that stuff is awesome. And yeah, Paul Dano was amazing in this role. Another part of this movie that I was like not expecting at all, and I was like pleasantly surprised about how awesome this villain was.
Yeah, I agree to what your point is, Henry. Like every time, yeah, like the Riddler was a character I was always looking forward to. Like every time they got like a message or something, like, oh, Riddler's coming back on screen. Like, it's gonna be good. Like he's gonna test the Batman and everything. And I like this villain. I kind of like the fact that they chose the Riddler because I feel like they could have easily given this role to Joker, like as like the madman kind of person, of like the mastermind behind this plan of like terrorizing and Gotham and putting hostages out there. But I kind of like this like cat and mouse game that the Riddler laid out for the Batman. It was definitely had like vibes from the movie Seven. And
Yeah.
I just feel like if it just makes me feel like any one of like Batman's villains, like Mr. Freeze or Poison Ivy, can have like their own like complex villain storyline that goes along with Batman and beyond like the comic book campy stuff that like MCU puts out there. But I really, yeah, like you said, this was just a really, really good portrayal of the villain and how he just pushes the story and character development.
Yeah, and interesting you point out the fact that this villain could have been the Joker, because it makes you think, oh, is it just like, are they interchangeable? Can you just like swap in the Joker? And like, in some cases you could, but in this movie, the Riddler's riddles were actually a big part of the movie. And that is a big part of the character and not a part of the Joker character. So I thought it was kind of fun. Like I was like trying to solve these riddles in my brain and stuff and like trying, playing along. That was kind of cool. And yeah, very reminiscent of the Zodiac killer, who would leave these like ciphers and stuff. So yeah, again, just yeah, awesome villain for sure.
Yeah, I did really love the Riddler as well. And like watching the movie a second time, you like look a little closer to see, oh, that's a clue. Oh, that's a clue. And I think the way they lead into each one of the riddles is really well. Um, and how there's always like little pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to like figure out as you're watching the movie. But it turns out to be something like way different, like thumb drive and like URL. And
Yeah.
there's always like a little bit of like dark humor in there as well. And I thought it's like but it like Paul Dano puts in like a very very intense, really well done performance there where he's scary and is menacing, but also you see that like he's kind of crazy and you see why he belongs in Arkham Asylum. And I think his final confrontation with Batman when he's like in jail was like a really really riveting scene.
Yeah. Yeah, that scene is super memorable when Batman kind of loses it because he's like so frustrated, he's like pounding the glass and stuff. Yeah, great scene.
That scene was that yeah, I left the movie with that scene still in mind.
Yeah.
Because the big question, I'm sure you guys thought about this too, was Riddler basically telling Batman that he knew he was Bruce Wayne? Did he or did he not? Right? Like that was the big question, I felt like.
Hmm.
And it could really go either way, however the way you want to interpret it. But he was a great choice for a villain. I feel like, you know, not having a villain that's going to necessarily be physical and fight toe to toe with Batman, but fight him on an intellectual level, I thought was really cool. And yeah, like following the breadcrumbs, trying to solve the clues as you're going along. It's like you're participating with the
Yeah.
villain, right?
Yeah, very cool. And real quick before we get off the Riddler, I had that thought going into the movie about how family friendly is this movie. I think I got my answer a few minutes right into the movie. The very beginning of the movie, we see this family. There's a dad saying goodbye to his wife and child. They're going off to go trick-or-treating on Halloween, having a nice little family moment. And the next thing you see is this shadowy figure. Turns out it's the Riddler. And the Riddler bludgeons him to death with a carpeting tool. And you see this happening on the screen. And I'm like, this is pretty fucked up. And I don't think I'm going to have my son watch this movie anytime soon. So I guess basically what I'm saying is this movie isn't exactly family friendly. So that's a good thing for like parents to be aware of, I think. Yes, the movie is PG-13, but it sure as hell felt like an R movie to me. And it's very dark, and it's very dark in different ways, and it's very dark all throughout the movie. It's not just this opening scene, it's like all throughout. It's scary, it's violent, and yeah, it goes into some dark places.
You know what's interesting though is that yeah, he gets bludgeoned to death, but it's not like he cut off Thanos' head.
Hey, that's a good point.
But again, of course, it's the tone that they set, right? Like they made it scary. Like they wanted it to feel like a horror film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way they set up that opening scene too, is almost like a rear window sort of thing where you can kind of see into their apartment, and you see this family having a nice moment, and then all of a sudden, boom, this guy is just getting beaten to death. Whoa. Yeah. Interestingly enough, yeah, Avengers End Game is another PG-13 movie. And that's been a bit of a litmus test for me because my son, Simon, has seen all the Marvel movies and hasn't really been freaked out. Although interestingly, you mentioned the Thanos decapitation, Rainier. That has always kind of freaked Simon out. But it's one moment, yeah. He'll look away and then he'll resume. He's all good. But yeah, with the Batman, whoa. Like, don't you guys think this movie felt more like an R movie than a PG-13 movie? Thoughts there?
Yes.
I think it's
It's pretty borderline. I mean, you can
Yeah.
you can
Okay.
argue that The Dark Knight was an R-rated film. I mean,
Yeah.
that had a tone too that, there's, I mean, I don't know if I would let like my little kids like watch The Dark Knight. Like the Joker is pretty scary,
Yeah.
And like the scary level on the Batman, it certainly ticks up a number of notches.
It also uses its one F-bomb in the movie.
Yeah. It had an F-bomb.
Oh, there's an F-bomb. I don't know if I
Yeah,
caught that. Where was
yeah.
that?
It
towards
was
the
real
beginning.
early. Yeah, real early on.
It was the commissioner said it. Something about like it was fucking Halloween or something, like happy fucking Halloween.
Oh, that's funny.
To Batman when he's like investigating the murder.
Oh, can we talk about the relationship between Batman and Commissioner and he's Commissioner Gordon at that point, right?
No, he's not.
He's Captain Gordon.
Captain Gordon, or it might be Lieutenant Gordon. I
Or
don't
Lieutenant.
remember.
Well, he's listed in IMDb as Lieutenant.
Lieutenant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, talk about great, like that's the dynamic duo right there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get
I
into
really
it.
like Gordon.
Me too. Yeah.
I thought that was a
listed
great
that-
casting choice.
I listed that as one of my highlights right there. Lieutenant Gordon. Awesome. Awesome in this movie.
Yeah, I thought like him and Batman had like great banter. They worked off each other really well. Like, no guns. That's your thing, man.
Yep. That's so
Got a
great.
lot of great dialogue. I think Jeffrey Wright bring something different to Gordon that we like didn't really get as much of, and I think like you really got to see their relationship, like Batman and Gordon's relationship, like up close in this movie. And while we got a lot of it in like the Nolan trilogy, it feels like it hasn't been like as close as it was here.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of like in the Nolan trilogy, we don't see a lot of like I mean there's a couple scenes, but we don't see much of Batman and Gordon, on the crime scene together with other cops like surrounding. Like what does that room feel like, And here we get that.
Yeah, that was an interesting dynamic. It's cool it happened so early, so it kind of like sets the tone. But yeah, you got this feeling that the police were like they were kind of weirded out by Batman, and they all viewed him as Gordon's guy. Oh, this is Gordon's guy, So that's just kind of a cool dynamic. And yeah, man, like Jeffrey Wright and Robert Pattinson had great chemistry. They're a great duo in this movie, and great banter. When they're on screen together, it's like gold. They're great in all their scenes together here.
Yeah, for me, like Gordon and Batman had really good chemistry, but for me, I think who I like the chemistry was Catwoman and Batman. I feel like Catwoman kind of like brought like some kind of like humanity to Batman. Like Batman was just always kind of speaking. I feel like either like in a like place of like, oh well, your friend shouldn't have done that, or like don't do this or whatever. And Catwoman was like, well, you don't know like the struggle that people have to do, kind of like taking him out of like his like little like Bruce Wayne privilege, upper class like mindset, and just being like, this is the struggle people have to do and stuff. And I don't know, I just thought like Catwoman's character just brought like some humanity to Batman.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Catwoman, played by Zoe Kravitz. What are your guys' take?
I definitely felt that like she channeled the year one like Catwoman.
Yeah, she looks like she stepped
to a
right off
T.
the page, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, she felt just like year one Catwoman.
Yeah, she had the short haircut and like the apartment with all the cats around and everything. Straight out of year
I like
one.
her look too, like the simplicity of the mask. It's basically just like
Beanie.
yeah, beanie with like the eyes cut out. Like how simple is
Right.
that? But it looks so great.
Yeah, it's perfect for like a street level like cat burglar.
Mhm. Yeah, and it does seem to imply that they're gonna kind of work their way up to more intricate costume, maybe get the goggles going, the cat ears. But for now, it's just like a little ski mask, right? Yeah. All right. Any other call outs?
I guess
yeah, go ahead, Christian.
I guess the one character, the other like Batman, big Batman character we haven't talked about yet is Penguin.
Yes.
And I thought Colin Farrell was barely recognizable in the Penguin role.
He wasn't recognizable at all.
I couldn't tell that was Colin Farrell. He channeled his inner gangster, and brought that classic gangster vibe to the Penguin. And I thought the car chase scene in the middle with Penguin and the scene after where they're interrogating him was great. I thought there was a lot of great banter in that scene after about how they're trying to discuss they think he's the rat, but he's the red herring. And I love that we also finally got to see the Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah.
And I like that was a central location to the plot was Penguin's lair.
It is interesting the position that Penguin is. I thought he would have been in a bit more of a power play position, but he was really just he was just the owner of the lounge, right? Just facilitating the bigger picture of the Maroni and Falcones.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting to me. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because to me, the Penguin is one of the villains, one of the super villains in Batman's rogues gallery, right? But in this movie, there really is no indication that he's a super villain. In this movie, he's really like a henchman, right? Maybe a glorified henchman, but ultimately he's just kind of Falcone's right-hand man in a way, right? And I kept looking for indications. I mean, it seems like they're going to build him up, right? He's got a show coming up soon, right? Where he'll probably rise in the ranks and whatnot. And yet I was looking for some sort of indication that he has I don't know, potential to be a supervillain. But they really seem to stray from that. They just kept him as this mob henchman. I don't know if that rubbed me the wrong way, but I kind of feel oh, this guy, this is the Penguin, and there's nothing to me that spoke that said supervillain.
I think that was
thoughts there.
I think that was a good move, because then I think it would have taken away from the focus of because I mean, you don't want to have
too many.
You don't want to have you don't want to have Batman and Robin all over again, where Ivy, Bane, and who else is fighting for screen time to be the main villain, right? I think it was just enough to introduce the character and see where his place is, and we'll see him rise to the ranks, I'm sure, in his series. But I think it was a good move not to take the focus away from the Riddler.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, we've seen what's happened before when there are too many villains crammed into a superhero movie, right? But I don't know. I feel I just needed something like a trick umbrella or just something. Give me something. Right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if a trick umbrella. I think that would
nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy, but I don't know.
I think that would have taken me out of the movie completely.
I needed something. I just needed something. All right.
That chase scene though with the Penguin. I mean, come on,
dude.
And how about that Batmobile?
Let's talk about the Batmobile. Let's talk about the Batmobile, because I thought it was fucking awesome. I
love how it was introduced as if it was its own character. I mean, they did that with Nolan's trilogy, and the Batmobile it's just such a big part of Batman. How can it not have such a grand entrance? But that slow hum into that loud eventual roar of the engine, that was really cool.
Yeah, that when the Batmobile first fired up, it damn near knocked me out of my seat. I was holy shit. It was super loud and just rumbled. And it had some vibes of the 60s Adam West Batmobile, right?
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
And you know what I liked about it too was that it wasn't refined where it had a bat symbol on it. You know what I mean? Again, he's still trying to figure out what Batman is and where it fits in, and it's just like that is the vehicle that fits that mindset, I feel like.
Yeah, it kind of fit in with the whole like unfinished aspect, right? This isn't like the final Batman. It's a work in progress. Same thing with the Batmobile. It didn't seem like a finished product. It was like a project in the making. Very cool.
One thing I liked from the Batmobile chase was like the whole when he like flips the Penguin's car, and then you see like from like the Penguin's perspective, like the Batman walking towards him, like kind of like all slow motion, and the music just kind of like makes it more intensified. I was like getting goosebumps. I was like, this is like cinematic perfection right here. Like with the Batman walking, like you hear his boots kind of just hitting the pavement and everything. I was like, this is fucking awesome. This is why, yeah, I really like that. Like it's just the small details.
And then the way he entered the Batcave on his on I don't know if they want to call it the Bat Cycle, but on like his motorcycle, like it was cool how he was there was like that maze through like the sewer system, and he was able to access the Batcave through the city. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, as opposed to having to drive all the way through to Wayne Manor and go under a waterfall or side of a hill or whatnot.
Yeah, another pretty significant difference that again made the movie feel pretty fresh.
Oh, are we talking about Alfred? We haven't talked about Alfred yet.
Let's do it. What'd you think, Rainier?
I thought he was great. Like, it is interesting seeing him from Black Panther now as Alfred,
Yeah.
But it's cool. Like, and it was also interesting too. Like when you're in Wayne Manor, there was another woman that was also in the household. So that indicates that there is some like level of staff that's like in the house.
All right. Yeah.
But it's only Alfred that knows what Bruce Wayne or what Batman is really doing. I thought that was interesting, but it's cool. Like he's helping him build the tech that Batman needs, for all his utility. He's not just there to like wipe dust and keep the cars gassed up,
Right.
Yeah, like going along with like kind of Rainier saying, like it was kind of cool, like kind of seeing like this Alfred kind of talk back to Bruce Wayne. Like every time like Bruce Wayne was kind of doing something he didn't agree, he was just like, "Oh, so you don't want to do this?" Kind of like a little sassy tone or whatever. I just felt like that was just kind of cool. Like there was just like that Alfred wasn't like some like side character or whatever. Like he like kind of stood toe to toe with Bruce Wayne and wasn't afraid to like speak up against him or anything like that.
Yeah, I feel like you were seeing like an Alfred that's like fully capable to like fight alongside Batman if need be. Because a lot of the times that you see Alfred on screen or like even in the animated series, he's an older guy with a little more silver in the hair, and he's the typical butler you would imagine in any sort of storyline. But like here, Alfred he's almost like right alongside Batman.
I think in the movie they alluded to Alfred training the Batman to fight. Like he mentions that, oh yeah, I trained you to fight, but I couldn't be your father. And I don't know if that like I've seen that interpretation before. I think Batman Earth 1 was the comic that I remember where Alfred teaches Batman how to be Batman or Bruce how to be Batman. Whether he's the only mentor, I guess, remains to be seen. But this Alfred he was a little different, but he still felt like Alfred. Like I guess complaint, if you want to call it that, about the movie was that there wasn't enough Alfred. They could have they used more. But I think Alfred, he was there for like a good amount of time. He sets the arc for where Bruce is and where he needs to be, and how he kind of he's the one who tells Bruce, like, I'm inviting these people here. You need to respect the legacy. And you see they don't have that, very chummy relationship that you see in like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, whereas this one's much more confrontational.
Mhm.
And you could see they have different odds, even though Alfred does help, Bruce on his quest and how he figures out the Riddler's code. He's the one who like helps him along the way with all the clues. And then drops, at the towards the end, he kind of drops the fact that, oh yeah, this is what happened to your father, and how Bruce thinks his father was really a bad man from what he's heard about Coney, but Alfred comes and gives him context and like kind of brings him back to the belief that his father was truly a good person.
Yeah, I was thinking about Andy Serkis, and I don't know if it's in his master plan, but he's certainly becoming like the king of geek movies, because now he's been Alfred in DC, he's been Claw in Marvel, he's been Gollum in Lord of the Rings, he's been Caesar in Planet of the Apes, he's been King Kong. I mean, this guy's doing it all. And yeah, it's kind of cool. Like before he was like the motion cap actor, right? But now like he's just a great actor, period, right? So
He directed Venom 2.
that's right. He's got a hand in all kinds of stuff. Although probably we shouldn't give him too much praise for that one. Stick to acting, Andy. Okay, so let's move on. Is there anything about this movie you didn't like so much? Any negatives? Thoughts there?
Like I know you guys said this, and I know you guys said like he has to be in there, but I just didn't like that Joker was in it again.
Let's talk
Like-
about that. Yeah. At the very end of the movie, there is a cameo in Arkham Asylum.
Like, I understand, like, there can't be a Joker without Batman, and not really a Batman without Joker. But I just felt like if they cut out Joker's cameo at the end, the story wouldn't have changed, and I feel like it would have been still the same. And because I don't know, like, is this like the fourth Joker we've gotten in the past decade, right? Yeah.
Well, how many Batmans have we had?
Well, because we've had Heath Ledger, Jared Leto, and Joaquin Phoenix.
Right.
So I just felt like just Joker, adding Joker into the mix was just completely unnecessary. That's just my take.
I agree with you, Porfirio. I think like for a 3-hour movie, I think it did run a tad long, so I think that is probably the first scene I would have personally cut out. Is that Joker tease at the end? Because you're right, it's like we've gotten so many Joker. We just had a big movie about the Joker like a couple years ago, and like Jared Leto made his like kind of swan song for the Joker at the end of Justice League last year. So it does feel like a bit too much,
That's a
I thought
solid
it-
point. Oh yeah, go ahead, Rainier.
I thought it was interesting that he was next door to the Riddler in is it Arkham or Blackgate? I can't remember what prison it was.
It might be Blackgate in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it hurt. I don't think it hurt having him in there. But again, it didn't totally like progress the story at all. If it was like a distasteful way of introducing the Joker, I'm sure I wouldn't have liked it, but I think it did just fine. I can't remember the back and forth that Riddler and Joker had, but like, I mean, I think they are letting you know that like, hey, there's going to be a bigger rogues gallery here. Buckle up your seatbelts.
That's a solid point. We talk about like fan service a lot, and the inclusion of the Joker here was definitely a fan service move, no question. But we've talked about before how there's kind of a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And generally it's safe if you're doing it as just a cameo, right? It doesn't really affect the main story. It's just something that's thrown in there, a brief moment for the fans, right? And I think that's exactly what this was. It didn't affect the main story, and it's just kind of a fun thing for fans to enjoy. So in that respect, there's no harm in it really. But I totally get what you're saying, Christian and Porfirio, like, yeah, we just saw the Joker in the Snyder Cut. There's a whole movie about the Joker not that long ago. There was Suicide Squad. There was, and I would add this also, with the Dark Knight and the first Tim Burton Batman movie. The main villain was the Joker, and those are two very beloved movies, right? So that first Batman is a big time like nostalgic choice for a lot of folks, and the Dark Knight is like widely recognized as one of the greatest Batman movies ever. So like, here's a movie a lot of people really enjoyed, the Batman, and I think the consensus was, for almost the entire movie, it's like, oh my god, they made a great Batman movie, and we didn't even need the Joker in it, right? And it's like, oh wait, the Joker is in this movie. Actually, nix that. So I thought it would have been cool if we just kept it 100% Joker free, and just like, and then it could stand alone, right? There was even a reference to Joker in Batman Begins, right? Didn't they like have the playing card at the end? So there's this like need to always include him, and yeah, I feel like that isn't necessary. Like, let's take a break from the Joker for a bit,
I thought that was cool. I thought the way they portrayed it was like pretty classy. Like, I didn't think it was too in your face. Like, I mean, you just see his shadowy figure, and it's just a short conversation between him and the Riddler.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of a safe move to have it just be a cameo. So like, I think we talked about how either you do a cameo or you do a fully fleshed out character. And then we talked a little bit how they went wrong with that with the Kingpin and the Hawkeye series. Maybe that's a good example of how not to do it. So I guess if you're going to do it, make it a safe play like this, or you do a fully fleshed out character. So not the worst thing, I suppose. But yeah, I think I'm with Christian and Porfirio on this. I could have done without it personally. Anything else? Any other negatives? Hey, let's talk about the runtime. 3 hours. I'll say straight up, I thought the movie was too long. It was just too long for me. Yeah, like, and maybe I'll get into another negative here, just because the follow-up is like, well, if it's too long, what do you take out? If it's all gold, like, why mess with perfection? Just leave it as is. So you may have noticed I was a little quiet during the Catwoman conversation, because I could have done without the Catwoman in this movie. We talked about the great chemistry between Gordon and the Batman. I felt like there wasn't chemistry between Catwoman and Bruce Wayne here. Like, they had a couple of kissing scenes, and it just, I wasn't feeling it. It's like, it didn't feel right to me. It did not feel right. I didn't feel like the actors had chemistry. And Porfirio, you mentioned how the Catwoman is like kind of a nice grounding character. I felt like, well, maybe there's an aspect to that, but I felt like Gordon was the character who did that. Like, he was like the grounding force in the movie. He was like the character that we as the audience could relate to. And yeah, like, I don't think I needed the Catwoman in this movie at all. So like, I'm thinking that's what I would have taken out of the movie. Maybe get it down to a tighter 2.5 hours, and I'm golden. But yeah, as it was, yeah, too long. I thought it was too long. Like, that was a big question going in. 3 hours, is it too much? I did think it was too much. I thought it could have been shorter.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Well, I did really like Catwoman. I do think, like, if I could improve something with her part of the movie, she has like two kind of major plot points in the movie. She's going after, she's looking for her friend Annika towards the beginning, but kind of switches gears in the second half of the movie because she drops the fact that Carmine Falcone's her father. I think those two plot points could have been tightened up a little bit to like kind of flow a little better. Um, and that probably would have also reduced the runtime. Maybe pick one of them. I don't know how exactly I would have done it. Um, but that's I guess that's my like critique on what they've done with Catwoman here.
And I will say this too, like it's easy for me to say as the armchair critic, but like just okay, just write the character out of the movie and give it a shorter runtime. That's a very simplified answer, because if you do that, you could ruin the movie. And like if a move like that like takes away from this movie, which is for me most of the way through amazing, that don't do it. But from my amateur perspective, that's what I would have done if I could, and I can't.
I feel like so like my unpopular opinion on this, I think like, you know, if I thought the rain time was okay, I felt like everything had to be in place for the storyline to develop and everything, but for me, I kind of lost interest in the movie once like the Riddler got caught. Then like once like this whole um like he laid out his grand scheme, and then like Robert Pattinson like figures out like what did you do, and then like the whole thing about like the ports being bombed and everything, how he has to go and save Gotham. I felt like that went back towards like the campy side of Batman that we know, like of like superheroes and stuff. Like at that point I was like, where is the Justice League when you need them to help save Gotham and all this? Because you know, before then it just felt like a detective kind of thriller movie, and then it was after Riddler got caught and everything, it just kind of took me out of that aspect.
Well, I have a answer to that. So like yeah, once the Riddler is imprisoned, I kind of have a similar thoughts. Like, oh shit, like he's already like put away, that he's done already. But his presence is still there, right? All his minions are dressed like the Riddler.
Yeah.
And he's, even though he's not there at the end in body, but he's there in spirit, right? And his presence is felt. And I totally dug the action finale. Like I did feel like before that moment the movie was a little bit lacking in action. It's not really like an action movie, like I've been saying, it's more of a crime serial killer kind of movie. But yeah, I could have used some more action, but then they gave it to me at the end. You get that kind of classic superhero finish. I felt I kind of needed that, so I liked the ending quite a bit.
I don't think the runtime was too long. If I would have found myself yawning at any point during the movie, then I would probably say that. But I never found myself yawning throughout that entire film, and therefore it didn't feel like 3 hours to me.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure this is you know, kind of a divisive thing. I've heard from some folks that it's a bit on the long side, but certainly some folks are completely fine.
Rainier's like, give me the director's cut.
3.5 hours.
Wow.
I mean, we sat through 4 hours of Justice League, and it was great. And I thought they did a great job with the Batman. It didn't feel like 3 hours. And I'll take more. Again, more movie for your buck, right? But like, if it was a crappy 3 hours, then of course I'd be complaining. But I don't have a ton of complaints.
Cool.
Yeah, like I feel like I could have a little bit quicker. Like I feel like they could have taken it, but I still really like. I was so engrossed during that 3 hours. I was so like invested what was going on, and I really do want to see this movie again once it comes out to streaming and Blu-ray. That like it's like, oh, they could have done it, but like I really loved what we got so much. I feel like what I'm saying feels more like a nitpick, you know, of like, I guess, but I love Batman. I got so much Batman.
I mean, I've certainly sat through movies that were an hour and a half that were totally crappy. I mean, the runtime itself, like, again, if it's a good movie, it doesn't feel like it's that long.
Yeah.
And
I
I thought
agree.
Catwoman was awesome. I mean, I don't know how much more they could have cut down Catwoman. Like, it was cool seeing like that take of Catwoman, like that perspective of, again, another, more ground level, Catwoman.
Yeah, and I get that, and it's a subjective thing. Like, to me, could have done without her, but for some, yeah, I know a lot of people enjoyed her in this movie. But another thing I thought of was, it was cool to see the Riddler. Like, he's like maybe my favorite part of this whole movie. But in addition to that, we really haven't seen a live action Riddler in a long time.
It's
And
Jim Carrey, yeah.
and
Jim Carrey.
and the one we got before was Jim Carrey, and talk about a completely different character. There's that, right? With Joker, I mean, we've been seeing Joker a lot, and we saw him very recently, and the Catwoman too. It's been 10 years, but the very last solo Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises, had Catwoman in it. So yeah, like, I'm thinking kind of unnecessary in a way. Like, there's so many great characters in the Batman universe that haven't seen the live action treatment, right? So why not give them a chance instead? I don't know, just my thoughts there.
Who would you have liked to have seen, just out of curiosity?
Well, so I think number one is I mean, to me, it would have been cool if it was just the Batman and the Riddler, like no Catwoman,
No Penguin?
and no Penguin. Well, maybe instead of the Penguin, just have him be a henchman, because I keep going back to the thing about, like, the Penguin to me is like a supervillain, and this was not a supervillain character in this movie. So yeah, maybe do the Penguin.
I would be curious to get a female perspective on Catwoman, because there's, it's us four dudes talking about this.
Yeah. And there you go. Like, if you take Catwoman out of this movie, it is like a sausage fest, basically, right? So maybe from that perspective, it was necessary. But yeah, that's a good point right here. We're just a bunch of dudes. So what do we know about the Catwoman?
What the hell do we know?
Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts? Positive or negative, or just random?
I did hear some criticism about how some people were not fans of how slow moving Batman was in a lot of scenes. A lot of the scenes, again, were like crime scene movements where he's just sort of like walking very slowly. And I think that was sort of the running joke, that the reason why the movie was 3 hours is because Batman was walking so slow. Did you guys take notice of that? It didn't actually bother me, but then now that I thought, and then thinking about it, I was just like, yeah, he was moving slow. But then I think the answer to that is because, that contact lens technology he's using, he's scanning the room, he's trying to get, like, facial recognition, and he's trying to just get good video.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it didn't bother me. I think I read like an article saying that it was more of like a kind of like Western kind of aspect, because like if you like listen to like those like when he's walking, like they really emphasize on like the boot sound to kind of give him like that Western cowboy kind of like don't fuck with me kind of attitude.
I can see that.
Yeah, so like especially like in the very beginning, like in that opening monologue when he's like, I live in the shadows, like how he just steps out of it and stuff. I was totally in the moment with that.
Yeah, I thought it fit the character, because this is not like a seasoned Batman, right? He's still in the early stages. So I think he's still kind of getting a feel for what the hell to do. So that might lend itself to maybe moving a little more slowly, a little more calculated. Yeah, I thought it fit.
one scene that really caught my attention, which I think you're pointing to, Henry, was the action, was this one scene. I forgot where it was, but when it's like a dark hallway, and all like the villains have like the guns and they're ready to shoot the Batman, and he just comes out and they're shooting, and the only light you see is like the rifles and stuff, and you see like Batman take him out like one on one. And like for me, that gave me like goosebumps from like that one scene in Rogue One when like Darth Vader comes out, like you hear like his mask, and then all of a sudden you see the red lightsaber. Like that came kind of gave me like that kind of vibe, along with like the Daredevil hallway kind of vibe. I was just like, this is the action that I expect from Batman, and I was totally living in that moment.
I feel like I've seen countless comic panels where it's like just the flash of like the rifle muzzle, right? And there was a scene they had scenes like that in Dark Knight Rises as well. But yeah, those scenes are always cool to watch.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I loved that scene with like the hallway. I like the way that like he had like the bulletproof armor and he just walks through gunfire pretty much throughout most of the movie. Um, I guess on that note, one bit of praise is I think the movie's just shot really, really well. Um, the cinematographer on this movie was Greg Fraser. I think I said that right. Um, but he was the cinematographer for Dune, um, which was an amazing looking movie. And he also did Rogue One
Ah,
as well. Um, and so he did that hallway fight scene with Darth Vader. And so I thought the way he was shot and the way they shot Batman walking through the shadows with the really great sound design as well was um was like spectacular. It was the way the way it was shot, the way it was filmed, it was such a mood, and I loved how slow the movie was, and like how it like you were like part of this mood and you just soaked in the atmosphere at all times of this movie. The way it used the color red a lot, the way
yeah,
it also
yeah.
used
hmm
green as well.
hmm
So yeah, ooh, getting goosebumps thinking about it.
That is a good point. We alluded to it earlier, but this is a beautiful looking movie. It's just like eye candy.
hmm
It's quite an experience. I'm glad we all got to experience it in the theaters.
Saw it a week later actually. So I was originally gonna watch it with you guys, but it fell on my daughter's birthday weekend, so that was tough.
Oh,
Yeah,
no worries. As long as you
It's
got
all
to
good.
eventually see it.
you saw it eventually, yeah.
I did like I was actively staying away from spoilers, but then as I started seeing, oh, certified fresh, I'm like, oh great, here we go. I mean, that was cool to see that, but see it anyway.
There you go.
Mhm.
Okay, so as we like to talk about with DC stuff, is it connected? With Marvel Studios, we all know it's all connected, but with DC, it's more complicated, right? So, the recent Peacemaker series has kind of further complicated things because, um, like up to that point, like I kind of got the feel that everything is kind of its own thing with DC. But the Peacemaker series really kind of solidified this like shared universe thing. And then we got the Batman, which doesn't appear to be connected with anything. So what are your guys' thoughts about the connectivity within DC and particularly with this movie, The Batman?
Glad this is not connected to the rest of the DC universe. Like, this was phenomenal and a really good like cinematography, attitude, visuals. If they had to connect it, I would love to see a showdown between Robert Patterson's Batman and Joaquin Phoenix's Joker.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that right after we all saw it, right? I agree, that would be amazing. Probably will never happen.
Probably will never happen.
Yeah.
And I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, but in particular, like both movies are great, number one, and both actors are great in those respective roles, and they're kind of both like like at the same point in their careers, right? They're like earlier on, right? The Joaquin Phoenix Joker is like early days. Same thing with this Batman, right? So wouldn't it be cool to see them clash right when they're like hitting their stride in their prime? But yeah, it's probably just a pipe dream.
Like, this movie definitely feels like it's its own. Like, I think the original idea for this movie was supposed to be a Ben Affleck movie, with Deathstroke, who we saw at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League, and we kind of see what the original lead-in was going to be for this movie. But a lot of things happened, and Ben Affleck left. Robert Pattinson came on. But like, I really like this movie's very much its own thing. I think this could be the branching off point for almost its own universe. In a way, a very like Batman Gotham centric universe. We have a Penguin show supposedly in the works. I think that Catwoman could do her own spinoff. I could definitely see more of Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman. Um, and kind of she leaves at the end of the movie. And like I think other characters you could work. As far as other superheroes, I don't know. It would probably have to be ones that don't have any superpowers, or maybe something a little more like Swamp Thing than Superman, so to speak. I think that might be a bit better fit, or like Green Arrow, if they were gonna go that route. Even though we just had the Stephen Amell Green Arrow. But that's my thought, is that this could be a branching off point for the Batman franchise, interconnected franchise.
Yeah. And yeah, it certainly feels like this movie is not connected with anything that preceded it, but it certainly seems like it will be connected with a number of things up ahead. We talked about the Penguin series upcoming, and a sequel to this movie. So I was just kind of browsing the internet just now, and a producer on the movie, Dylan Clark, said pretty definitively, we can safely say the Batman 2 will be released between now and 2027. So there you have it. So I think the bottom line is there isn't anything connected to the Batman yet, but there will be. So maybe it will be a shared universe unto itself, right? So yeah, stay tuned. Looks like there's more to come here. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, the fact that it doesn't appear to be connected in any way to what we've been referring to as the DCEU, Justice League, Peacemaker, etc. But it seems like probably at a minimum we're going to get a trilogy and like a Penguin spin-off series. Like, what are our feelings there?
I'm fine without a shared universe in DC. I feel like Marvel and the MCU can keep that monopoly of having a shared universe and having everything connect. I don't know. It's that, again, there's that ripple effect of, because the MCU movies were so successful, now everyone's looking at every comic movie like it's supposed to be connected. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know, I feel like it's awesome. Like, it's awesome to have like those cameos and to have those, those deep cut call outs, but it's just like, at some point, like, can it hinder like the storytelling that you can throw out there? I don't know. Yeah. But there's that expectation, and I feel like it's another refreshing thing to like have these standalone movies, which are totally fine, tell a great story. That's cool. You have to have the Justice League in it. Does I don't know. I just don't want it to. I don't want it to continue to be like in the shadow of the MCU. That's the thing that's really annoying for me.
Yeah, good point.
That is a good point. Like, I think also that's what DC and Marvel generally just feel like in the comics, Marvel's definitely known for having the shared universe. You get the Marvel single issues. And while DC does have that, DC's also it's almost like more known for like singular graphic novels that are kind of all their own thing. The Dark Knight Returns is not in the main continuity, and neither's Batman Year One. The Long Halloween is, also not in the main continuity. Same thing with All Star Superman, and like the list kind of goes on. The Earth One series, that are like high selling, great graphic novels, but they're kind of just all meant to be their own thing. So like it's also kind of how I'm seeing DC now. There's like a main continuity, but Batman's its own movie, Joker's its own movie, and they don't need to connect. They're their own thing.
That's a good point too. There is comics precedence to this. There are standalone stories in comics. Yes, this does happen, right? It's not all connected all the time. Though, devil's advocate, do you think it'll feel weird when some of the DC universe is connected and some is not? So, for example, it seems like they are going full steam ahead with connected with Aquaman and Flash, both getting solo movies later this year. They both appeared with the Justice League and the Peacemaker series. It seems like they're going connected there. So already we saw like a bit of an absence there, right? Because we saw Wonder Woman, Superman, Aquaman, and the Flash, and like Batman was almost like a glaring omission there. Would it feel weird with like the rest of the DC universe kind of moving ahead and no Batman? He's just like absent. How do we feel about that?
I'm actually so glad I just finished Peacemaker, because I would have gotten so mad if you would have told me that. I just finished it on Friday.
Oh,
so.
thank God.
Ooh.
It was a close one. How do I feel about how do I feel about it? Some of it being connected. I mean, I don't know. That at that point it starts to draw the line of like, is it bad fan service? Is it good fan service? I don't know.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at and I'm feeling is, as long as it works, connected, not connected, if you're putting out good shit, people aren't going to complain, right? All good.
Right. I mean, if it makes sense, right? If it weaves into the storyline so that it tells a good story, sure, why not, right? But we've also seen with what the MCU did. They took like movies that were out of continuity and brought it into continuity with No Way Home. I mean, what's to say they can't do that with DC, right? But again, I don't know. I feel like it's going to start following the McMarvel formula, and it's going to be hard to like hit that bar because they were first to market, and it's always going to be compared to no matter what.
Yeah. The reality is there's kind of an expectation now, right? It's like, well, they're doing a shared universe. Why can't everyone do that, right? And the reality of it is that it's really hard to pull that off. And you might even ask, why would you want to copy that? Like, that's something someone else is doing. Why does everyone have to do that, right? So there you have it. Well, speaking of Marvel, I personally think it is pretty cool that we got a great Spider-Man movie, and then a mere few months later, a great Batman movie. So let's talk about that a little bit, because in this particular room, we have some tremendous Batman and Spider-Man fans. So look, we're living in a world where we just got some awesome solo Spider-Man and solo Batman movies, right? Let's talk about that a little bit. I think we're pretty blessed. I think this is a great time to be alive. Yeah, how do we feel about that 1-2 punch? We just saw Spider-Man No Way Home a few months ago, and then we're getting the Batman. How awesome is that? How awesome is that? Let's talk about it. What are your thoughts?
It's great. This is like when the Marvel DC rivalry is at its best. It's great to see both like the heaviest hitters of Marvel and DC, Spider-Man and Batman, put out like, arguably their best movies yet, like so close to each other. Like it feels very satisfying as like a comic book fan.
I feel like superhero movies have come a long way. Like they're being critically acclaimed. Like big stars and directors are now doing these movies, and it's the expectation that like every summer or holiday blockbuster is going to be a superhero film. I feel like we're certainly spoiled, that's for sure, to the point where we can complain about a trailer and then they'll change the trailer.
Yeah.
Like the golden age of like superhero movies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, this is kind of simplifying matters a bit, but it's almost like if you can't make a great Spider-Man movie, then Marvel, you have failed. And the same goes with Batman. Like if you can't hit it out of the park with Batman, like fuck all the other stuff. I'm oversimplifying, but a few years back, like what was the best stuff? Like the stuff that was creating the most buzz, right? The Avengers, and on the DC side, like Wonder Woman, right? Great, that's awesome. People were loving it. But you could argue during those periods, there were definitely times where Spider-Man was kind of on the decline. Like look at the year 2012. We had the Avengers movie, and we had a lukewarmly received Amazing Spider-Man movie, right? So Spider-Man stock was low, the Avengers stock was high.
And a lukewarm received Batman movie that same year.
Oh, right, yeah, Dark Knight Rises, exactly, yeah. Cut to a few years later, everyone's talking about Wonder Woman, and everyone's shitting on the Zack Snyder movies where Batman is prominent, right? So I didn't think about it so much then, but it's a little weird, right? Where like the best stuff from these major comic franchises are kind of the the less popular characters. So it's almost like a return to glory in a way, right? The best characters are killing it, right? So I don't know. In a way, it's like, oh, you can really feel good about it because they're doing right by the fans. And again, it's oversimplifying. I'm not here to shit on lesser known characters, and we need the lesser known characters. That's great. I want to see more of it. But right now, at this very moment, it's got to feel good, right? It's got to feel good that we have an awesome Spidey movie, an awesome Batman movie, and yeah. And if there is a rivalry, hey, we can feel good about both sides because shit, these movies rocked, man. All right, let's get into ratings. On a one, give the Batman. Who wants to start?
I'll start. I mean, I did love this movie. As I've said before, I think this is kind of the Batman movie I never knew I always wanted. The the way it's shot, the style, the aesthetic, the like the way the characters are done, and like the gritty noir detective aspect of it that they really hammered home was just amazing. I can't say enough praise about this movie, and I can't wait to see it again. I'm definitely gonna like buy it day one on Blu-ray. So I'll give it the full 5 out of 5 for me.
Awesome. I can go next. So highly enjoyed this movie. In a lot of ways, exceeded expectation. I think I'm gonna go with a 4 out of 5 though, just because of the shortcomings I did mention. I did think it was too long, and wasn't a big fan of the Catwoman character here. So 4 out of 5 for me. How about you, Porfirio?
Yeah, so this is actually my first Batman movie I've seen in theaters. All the other Batman movies I've just seen on DVD, and that was an experience watching on IMAX, and it felt really good. Like the music, the visuals, the acting, I thought were all great. I would probably give this a 5 out of 5. I think I had like expectations going into the movie that I thought it was going to be good, but I just came out being like, wow, like kind of like mind explode. Like it went higher and above what I would have ever thought a Batman or even superhero film can do. And just because you don't see that kind of stuff with the MCU. And so yeah, I recommend this. Even if like this is like your first time going to watch a Batman movie, it's a really good place to start. 5 out of 5.
Cool. And just to clarify, your first solo Batman movie in theaters, or just first Batman movie in theaters, period?
Solo. Yes,
Okay.
Solo.
Okay. Because you did see Batman v Superman in theaters, correct?
I did, yeah, I did see BVS in theaters.
And we saw Justice League together, and no one else is in the theater.
Oh yeah.
There you go. All right. How about Urinair? What's your rating?
I'm going with a 5 out of 5. I mean, it's a fresh take. It's a new start for Batman, a different time frame for him. And I'm really excited for the potential that the franchise has for like the sequel or a threequel. Hope that happens. But yeah, really enjoyed it. 5 out of 5.
Awesome. And that's a good point too. It's pretty tantalizing about what might be to come, exciting. It's definitely exciting. And I don't want to be the Mr. Poo-Poo here with my 4 out of 5. You guys know I'm like notorious stickler. I rarely give 5s. So yeah, definitely high praise. I bow down to this movie. I had the time of my life watching this movie. It's awesome. It's an experience for sure. And one thing we hinted at earlier but didn't follow up on is the comparison, right? So a lot of people are talking about this movie as being one of the best, if not the best, Batman movie ever. And a lot of conversation going around right now is what's better, the Batman or Dark Knight? Maybe we can talk about that a little bit to wrap up on. Do we have thoughts there? Do we think this is a conversation worth having even? What do you guys think?
That's a tough comparison. That's a tough comparison. Just because like the Dark Knight like follows Batman Begins, so there's already a level of progression, and we've seen some amount of maturity from the characters. And this is like the first Batman film. Sorry, before you, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say like I don't feel like I'm in a place to compare the two, because like I said, this is like I'm not a big like DC person, so I had not seen Dark Knight in so long, or even the other Batman films, like with Michael Keaton. So I feel like I have nothing to compare it to. So I can't compare it.
Yeah, I really can't compare it. To me, they're like different chapters of Batman's life. Like there's the Nolan chapter. Now this is the new chapter.
I think what's like hard to compare. I did rewatch The Dark Knight because I was like thinking this question so much I had to rewatch the movie again. Um, and like it's interesting to see how far superhero movies have come since The Dark Knight. Because back in 2008, 2007, when The Dark Knight came out, there was nothing like that movie. I think it was so fresh. It was so like intense to see such a crime thriller done in the way of Batman. And but that was before I was pretty much I think that was around the same time Iron Man 1 came out, the start of the MCU, before we really saw what the MCU could do, and we saw all these superhero movies have come out and all these different takes. It was before Logan, it was before, the Avengers End Game, before Deadpool. And so now we're here, and you see the way the Batman has built off the Dark Knight, how they follow similar themes, how there's a similar take on the Riddler to what they did with the Joker, and and like it builds on it. It adds more. It brings back more atmosphere and more action, and like it's hard for me to. And while I was definitely in high school when I saw The Dark Knight, and that movie rocked my world at the time, it does kind of make that comparison harder because seeing it now, I'm in a much very different place in my life. Um, and and so like I'm not sure if I would place it as number one or number two. Part of me still wants to believe The Dark Knight is the greatest superhero movie of all time because that's what I thought initially. But I will say, like, even if like I may, think The Dark Knight is better. I think this movie is the definitive Batman experience. I think this movie just oozes the atmosphere of Gotham and just oozes Batman.
So
Well
a good love
said.
letter.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk about that too much, but yeah, the everything about this movie feels like Batman. Like I said before, it doesn't feel like previous Batman movies, but the mood of it just invokes Batman, right? It invokes Gotham, and you know, yeah, if you put past Batman movie baggage aside, you do get that Batman feel. That's great. And to me, the Dark Knight comparison, yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to ask this particular question. I personally prefer the Batman, but the reason I say I'm the wrong person to ask is that I wasn't the hugest fan of the Dark Knight. Like I actually like the Dark Knight Rises more than Dark Knight. And I think I'm in the minority there. But yeah, no, to me, I thought a little bit about just like the whole scope of it, and yeah, that first Michael Keaton Batman is like a nostalgic favorite. So like it doesn't matter what comes out later, that'll always be like my like nostalgic favorite. But like to me it's more like Dark Knight Rises or the Batman, and I'm not so sure about that. That's maybe a tie to me right now. Um, but I will say that it is pretty awesome that we got a Batman movie that we're even talking about as being possibly the best ever. So again,
I didn't know you like Dark Knight Rises over the Dark Knight.
I do. I like when I saw it, I was like, this is fucking awesome, man. This is better than the last one. And then like I just kept hearing like the general consensus, and general consensus was like not only is The Dark Knight the best Batman movie ever, but it's possibly the greatest superhero movie ever, period, right? And I'm like, what? Did I see the same movie as everyone? And yeah, I don't know, man. The Dark Knight Rises, Bane in that movie is so fucking cool. I just love Bane in that. And I think as an action movie, I think maybe as an action movie, it's the best of the trilogy, right? It has like the most fights and stuff. So
I think what I really appreciate about the Nolan trilogy is that it's a definitive beginning, middle, and end, because it does end in a way where it's just like, well, what if Batman's just done? You know?
yeah.
And I think a lot of superhero movies are not I think they're scared to do that because they want to keep these franchises going. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think we're going to see a lot of that happening. And every one of Nolan's movies was like its own standalone movie. Like it had a beginning and an end, and you tie the three movies together and it still works the same way.
Yeah. That's a good point. And maybe speaks to why I liked Dark Knight Rises so much, because yeah, it had a definitive end. It doesn't have a cliffhanger. It just ends, it's cool that way. All right. With that, we can wrap up the episode. This is farewell from Rainier, Christian, Porfirio, and Henry.